Welcome to the session of our web series, Fireside Chat with Champions. Today we will be talking about someone who is having tremendous experience in both as a founder as well as an investor in startups. So today we have a special guest, Niall Murphy. Niall is a founder and CEO of Web of Things software company, EVRYTHNG. A computer scientist by training, Niall is a technologist, a serial entrepreneur, and an angel investor with 25 years of experience in innovation and future thinking. Niall has built pioneer businesses in internet infrastructure, the mobile internet, and web services. He founded one of the first ISPs in South Africa in a joint venture with Sprint. He also co-authored the Wi-Fi International Roaming Access Protocols Framework in 2005. Thanks a lot, Niall, for accepting our invitation. Why don't you talk a little bit about what your current activities are for knowledge of our audience? Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me in this discussion. So yes, I founded and run a business called EVRYTHNG, which is in the Internet of Things environment. We provide a global data platform to manage the digital identity of consumer products. So basically what we're doing is connecting consumer products to the web. So our customers are brands like Ralph Lauren or Unilever. And we help them to follow their products from manufacturer right through to the consumer, and also help them have digitized products so the consumer can interact with, for example, a polo shirt from Ralph Lauren or a packet of cleaning product from Unilever, and do that with their smartphone and digitally interact with the product. So that's what we do.
That's awesome. Something I strongly believe is today's needs of our. Even actually in the area we work, that is agriculture technology, we also find the smart packaging where people want to interact with the food they are buying to have a better understanding of where it was packaged, when it was packaged, and how it was cultivated. So traceability, I also agree, is something we all need to be adopting in our lives. So that brings us to our first question, Niall, that you yourself have been a founder of so many companies, invested in quite a few. You would like to understand from your perspective that the impact of COVID on the startup ecosystem, and how do you see the digital transformation enabling the startups to be, I'll say, that profitable businesses going forward? So can we have your perspective on the same?
Absolutely. Whenever there's a downturn or a crisis moment, and this is obviously one of a global scale, but that's also a huge moment of opportunity, because the competitive environment is significantly reduced. Large companies that would be making more expansive investments are perhaps more conservative in the circumstances, and a new set of problems emerge that therefore require new solutions. So that's the positive. And in my experience, I started in my last company, before starting EVRYTHNG, my last company just actually in the dot-com crash in the early 2000s, and this company, EVRYTHNG, shortly after the financial crisis in the late 2000s, and it was driven by that kind of a dynamic. Obviously, the cost of investment capital, venture capital, goes up in this environment, and so it's harder to raise cash, which really just says that the idea needs to be sharper, and the initial customer proof points need to be a bit stronger. But as I said just now, the large companies are in these kind of environments much more conservative in their own investments, but that means that they're also willing to buy things that competencies that they need, and so there's an opportunity to partner there in a new way.
That's a great perspective. Even I also strongly believe that in early 2000, actually, the businesses were not smart enough to understand that when the bubble burst, how to take care of it. Now going forward, currently people are having far more understanding, and they are having far more capability to take care of the right sort of decision, to understand where to invest in. That brings us to our second question, Niall. Actually, there are a lot of specific domains which are struggling far more than the other domains. And same is with the countries. Some countries are doing better than others when it comes to the impact of COVID. Which are the specific sectors do you strongly believe that actually would be having faster recovery than others? Also, I would like you to touch upon, because you have been part of the wireless communication revolution itself, that how do you see the 5G, right? And what relevance we see post-COVID era for that?
Well, I think that there's no question that the crisis is accelerating digitization adoption across multiple industries. So I've got a lot of exposure to the consumer products industry, and what we've seen are big problems in supply chains caused by a lack of data intelligence, a lack of visibility that brands have across their supply chains. So there's an acceleration in the adoption of digitization of supply chains to improve visibility. Similarly, we've seen a tremendous acceleration, obviously, in e-commerce. If you look at the statistics from North America, from Europe, and from obviously in China, that during the lockdown period, tremendous accelerations in adoption of e-commerce because people didn't have any other means of purchasing. But it's unlikely that will return then to the norm. So whilst last year, for example, in North America, physical stores, e-commerce was responsible for about 16% of sales. So in other words, 85% of sales or so was coming through physical stores. The expectation is that it'll double. So it'll be at least 30% of sales going forward will now be through e-commerce channels. So big acceleration of the adoption of digitization. Obviously, categories like luxury fashion and clothing have been severely hit, while food industries have seen acceleration. And in fact, demand that would have been going into restaurants has been redirected to home supplies, and so there's always winners and losers in every situation. But from a digital perspective, I think that the crisis is, if I can use the word positive, it's probably not the right word. It's accelerative to generally to digital transformation.
Awesome. I would like to add up the similar, I said that in the same chain of thought. Do you also believe that because now people are buying more online, right? The biggest differentiation in the brands were actually the experience, right? So when you walk into a Gucci or a Wolfram and you see that the presentations are different, and you have a feeling of, I'll say that, a little bit of awe when you go to those brands. Now suddenly you'll be doing a lot of things typically within the screens of your computers or of your mobile phone. So do you believe that the cost and the the efficiency of delivery mechanism will become more important than the awe or the proud or the feel of a brand?
Well, I think that the experience of the brand will become a key part of the brand. So that virtualization of the brand experience that you would otherwise have got in a physical environment is certainly now a new competitive landscape. I also think that the truthfulness of the brand. So one of the things that's shifting, I talked just now about consumer behavior moving towards e-commerce, but there's also a shift in consumer behavior to be more demanding on the values of the brands that they're buying from. So has a company behaved well in the crisis? Has it not behaved well? And that transparency is what consumers appear to be looking for. And therefore brands need to communicate. I want to come back to, in your preceding question, you asked me about 5G, and I didn't answer you about that. I think that 5G is certainly a benefactor here, because we have got an increase in generally digital transactions. We've also got this transition to e-commerce, the closing of retail stores, which means that brands are now needing to work out how to extend their logistical capabilities to have generally the gathering of more intelligence, and obviously, as you were just saying, to be able to extend experience to the consumer, that requires more bandwidth. and so networks will be required for more and more traceability to be able to support logistics and to be able to deliver experiences. One of the key changes is that companies are moving their manufacturing from being perhaps offshored to being onshored. That the change in the fact that less volume will go through retail stores means that they are needing to distribute products in new ways, and all of that requires more communication. So I think that 5G's demand is accelerated.
Perfect. That's great articulation of these points. I would also like to understand from you, Neil, is that actually COVID is just not an economical challenge. It is also social, cultural, as well as a personal crisis for a lot of people. Right? Because we human beings, we love to travel, we love to meet people. In fact, we have met far more in conferences than actually on phone, right? Whether it's in Dalian or Tianjin or Davos, where actually you like talking to people and you get a lot of insight in those type of things. Now those are going to dry up for sure. How you as an individual and your organization, you have coped up with the COVID-19, and what things you have done to take you to the next level post-COVID?
Well, personally, it's been an interesting experience for me because I spend most of my life on an airplane normally, and I figured out that it's been 20 years since I've spent this long in one place, sleeping in the same bed, right? So, because I've been at home for the last 8 weeks, and that's a novel experience. But for my whole company, we've got a team of 70 people that are now all working from home, and yet we've been able to be pretty productive and effective in this way. And I think partly because the infrastructure of our business was already virtualized. We were already using cloud-based tools, and quite used to working in a distributed fashion. I've seen with some larger companies that we work with as customers that transition has been a little bit more difficult. But I think one of the measures we've needed to put in place for a number of our employees, that perhaps live alone or have small children, that it's not so easy to work from home, and so providing a whole new definition of kind of what does the workday look like, when is time applied. We've got to be a lot more flexible about that. To make it sustainable for everybody. So those are some of the things we've been learning as we've gone through this reacting to this crisis. Me, I'm in Switzerland. My family's all together under one roof. That's quite nice, at least so far. I don't know if my children would agree, but we're it's pleasant to be together at the moment.
No, yeah, it has been pretty, I'd say that challenge initially for me also, but because we have been locked down for nearly 50 days now, right? Within we cannot even move out. But I found it I've been more productive for sure, right? And maybe in hindsight, when I see that a lot of those trips could have been avoided if rest of the people in the ecosystem would have understood the value, right, of remote communication virtually, where what we are doing today. Right, then we could have saved a lot of, I'll say that, money, miles, as well as environmental benefits which comes along with that. So yeah,
well, I think this is a key point, right? That distance has to some degree disappeared, right? And the whole world has been trained in this new way of connecting and communicating, and this is a tremendous opportunity. So. I think some people are saying that we're sort of into a de-globalization phase now, but I would disagree. I think that actually global communication has perhaps not been as extensive as it is now with this kind of virtualized communication, and people are understanding that actually everybody's accessible, everybody's connected, and so I think there's big opportunities for new ways of working and to take advantage of these new practices.
No, actually, in fact, as you rightly said, even I strongly believe that we won't get de-globalized. Only thing is that maybe the supply chain become more local, but digital media and ideas, we need more collaboration globally. for coming out with these problems which we have faced today. Someone who is developing a vaccine in Britain would be used someone in India. So those type of things are only possible if we collaborate. So that's very, very important. So that brings us to the last section of our discussion. I want 3 silver bullets from you for those startups who are weathering this storm and they want to come out as someone who is surviving to pick up and grow once the COVID issue is getting sorted out. So based on your experience, I would like to understand what a young startup entrepreneur should do in these troubling times.
Well, I think that you use the word surviving, and I think that that's the very important, is the number one issue is to survive. So a lot of entrepreneurs are concerned about protecting the amount of momentum or scale that they might have built up, and that can be quite dangerous actually, because that's cost, and you don't know. I mean, literally, we don't know how long it's going to be before we start seeing meaningful recovery. So the first thing to do is to be incredibly fiscally conservative and really tighten your cost base as best as you can to be able to survive, because there will be fewer people who survive. The competitive landscape will get thinned, and those that survive to the other side then have a disproportionate opportunity to take market share. There's 2 ways you can do that. You can totally, you can remove people and fixed costs from your environment, or you can negotiate with your team to reduce the overall cost of your team, but still keep people employed and therefore keep an ability to be responsive to the environment. So I think that's the first issue. Secondly, I think it's important to understand that your customers have completely new needs. So what you thought you were solving for at the beginning of the crisis or before we entered into the crisis is not what you're solving for when you come out of the crisis. Everybody's environment has been changed, and that's a big opportunity. So invest the time that you have now to understand what those new needs are as thoroughly as possible, and re-point your business at what those new needs are. Anybody who thinks that the environment hasn't changed definitely doesn't know that the environment has changed, right? So I think that's the kind of key issue, and then look for alliances, right? I mean, where are the new opportunities for partnership with perhaps competitors, or companies that would have been competitors, or perhaps with corporate partners who now are needing to access capabilities that they themselves don't have, and aren't able to invest in themselves. And so those are the 3 areas that I would suggest.
No, that's awesome recommendation, because as you rightly said, that you need to collaborate, you need to survive, reducing your cost, and very, very important thing is that the world of your customers have changed. So you need to change accordingly. And I'll just give you a small example which happened with me. We do a lot of work in agriculture technology. So my field team interact with farmers a lot, and we do a lot of advisory for them about the crops and all that. You'll be surprised, 80% of those farmers are now asking my team, can they teach them how to do a video call? So needs have changed suddenly, and we have to equip for that. Anil, thanks a lot. It was a very, very helpful discussion. I learned a lot from it, and I'm very sure that the audience would also learn from it. And definitely it is going to give them some strength to go to the next level and come out victorious in this COVID war. Thanks a lot for your time, and namaste.
My pleasure, and it's fantastic you're doing these conversations, and thank you for putting this content out into the world to help people. That's fantastic. So be safe and take care. Okay.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.